Alright, what we're looking at today is color correction within Premiere. This type of color correction would mostly be applied to footage we shoot on the Blackmagic camera. There's only so much we can do when we're shooting at 720p 60 frames. For our event stuff, you just don't have much color latitude in H.264 and in that lower resolution. This would apply to materials shot in QuickTime or DNxHD. When you get the footage out of the camera, it's very flat. This is intentional. It looks a little something like this. And what we need to do is apply a couple filters to help the thing look not so bad. We're going to start with this shot. First thing we want to do is add a sharpen filter. Sharpen can be found under blur and sharpen. Drop it on. And it won't be a huge difference. Put this at about 20. You can go up to 30, but then when you're in 30 in the details, sometimes it starts to get a little bit too much. You'll get some artifacting. This is very hard to see until we add contrast and saturation boosts. Next thing we want to do is the saturation boost. I do this with the fast color corrector. It's not the best tool for it, but it's pretty much the best tool in Premiere that I've found so far. Crank this to 200 when you're on the Blackmagic. It is very flat, so you'll need as much of a contrast boost as you can get. Once that's at 200, fold that back down. Next thing we want to apply is an RGB curve. Now the RGB curve will have 4 tools in it. You've got your red, green, blue, and we also have the Luma right here, the master. We'll get into that in a minute, but before we do that, I would like to boost the contrast and brightness. This is just my preference, and I would encourage you to play around with it as you like. I set this to about 20, and that recovers a bit of the contrast that is not inherent in the Blackmagic camera. Just to give you a look at what we've done so far, we're going to duplicate that click and remove the effects, and we'll be using this as our A/B comparison by toggling the track output on and off. So that's what we've done so far. That's what came out of camera. It's already looking better, but I'd like to push it a little bit harder. To do that, we go into the RGB curves, and you just do your basic contrast boost by bringing the blacks. We want those rich, kind of inky, cinematic blacks, and then give us some brightness. We don't want to lose our image to that muddy look. It's not the best, but you can blow out the whites a bit. We're losing detail over here, but that's not so bad because we're losing detail in something that is not that attractive. It's just a plastic bucket for compost. Not particularly beautiful. All right, you can collapse that. And again, let's look at what we got out of camera to what we're delivering to the client. Play that back. Looking not so bad. This is what we got out of camera. All right, once you have your basic settings, you can take that, select all. I do this by command clicking each item on the list, and then paste that onto other clips. And you'll see right away it starts to pop more. Now, we've gotten into something a little funky here. This room is a little bit underexposed inside the room and overexposed outside the window. Let's see what we can do with that. First thing we could do is bring up the brightness of this image. And don't be afraid to push the Blackmagic a little bit harder than you would push the 70 or the 60 or even the Alpha 7S if we're shooting on that. The QuickTime, the ProRes codec has a lot more latitude than anything we've been doing in H.264, so you can really crank this stuff. Normally on H.264 I wouldn't go past 20, but with ProRes or DNxHD, you can really go for it. Let's take that back down to 30 for the contrast and 20 for the brightness. That's looking a little dark, but we've got a bit of the brightness recovered. Let's go back to here. We still want black blacks, but if we bring this little toggle all the way up, we're crushing too much. We're losing too much visual information. So bring it down. You still want it to lock in on those inky blacks, and moving this down will even out those lights a little bit. All right, let's take a quick look at what we started with and what we ended up with. Duplicate the clip, remove effects. That's what came out of camera. That's what we're looking at now. Not bad. We're losing detail in the window. I don't mind too much. We could try to recover that with a vignetted filter, but I'm not too interested in that. Let's go for some outdoors footage. Let's get a little bit more moody. We're going to duplicate that without any effects straight away, and let's paste those effects. Not bad. Not bad at all. Now, what I'd like is, because this is snowy, outside, cold, having it balanced to straight white doesn't really feel very moody. It feels like we could do a little bit more. Now, there are two ways we could bring out the blues of this snow scene. One way is to go in here and bring up the blues a little bit, but that looks very artificial. So let's do something different. Let's cheat. In Premiere, we have these things called Lumetri looks, and these are lookup tables. They're really, really nice, and you can apply them to clips and get some cool effects. Under temperature, we can go to cold overall, drag and drop that on there, and already it's feeling like a bit more snowy, a bit colder. That's without, that's with. Let's continue to enhance the feeling of this by bringing down the whites and making it kind of a darker scene. And let's add a little bit more blue overall. But we don't want to get artificial, just to cool down the whole scene. All right, and let's look at what we got originally. That's what we got out of camera, and that's with a bit of color correction. It just looks much better. It's a very, very moody shot, and it has a good feeling to it. Let's go with one of these, and then that will wrap out the tutorial. I'm going to duplicate quickly so that we have an A/B comparison, and let's paste our effects. Holy moly, that looks bad. So this is way too much contrast for this image. Let's leave that at 20. Let's come over here. We'll reset that. By clicking this little button, you'll reset all the parameters of that effect, and each effect has a full reset button. What can we do with this? Let's bring it up a little bit and get those blacks back. Get those mids popping. We don't want to lose too much detail on the highlights of the ball. Now, that's looking better, but this shot, the color balance is off. You can easily tell that this is not white. It's looking a little red, so let's try bringing down the red just a hair. Already that's looking better. Already, get it? And let's boost the blue a little bit. So these curves are very, very useful in doing minor color correction. You aren't going to get into hyper stylistic color correcting, but you can balance an image with relative facility by using these curves. And let's look at what we got out of camera. That's what we got out of camera. Not so great. There we go. Much, much better. Now this one, I feel like we're kind of abusing the orange here. So what I would like to do is go back to our fast color corrector and just turn this down a bit. Let's go to 150. A little too dull. Let's split the difference, 175. Okay, that's good enough. We've got rich oranges, but they're not burning out the sensor. So that is a quick and effective way to do color correction within Premiere. I hope this was useful. Take it easy.